we cover it all. And today we're talking about books, out of all things, and a very different sort of book. And when I was reading the one liner, it really gravitated to me. A humorous coming of age tale woven with sex, beauty, money, power, and the question of who's using whom. Mm-hmm. I am available for the audiobook if you ever need me. But
Great. That's
it
a story for offline, a new innovation that Lindsay was just sharing with me about the audiobook, because my book's not quite available in audio, but coming soon in audio.
coming soon, folks. It's gonna happen.
It's
So
in print.
it's coming together. So you can
Yeah.
get the print copy, and you know the audio is coming. So now I'm gonna take it then. Natalie's life then in the 80s in the restaurant business. So you were all about sex, beauty, money, and power. It sounds like a really glamorous life here. We gotta be careful because the Sex and the City people might be wanting to steal your ideas. But um, from in all seriousness now, for those people that are shopping around on Amazon or go to the local bookstore, who is the audience that is reading Lying Down with Dogs? Who's connecting with you on it? How do you find that audience, or how do they find you?
Okay. Well, when I was first we were launching the book, my gut feeling or my immediate thought was that the book would appeal to more women, and especially women who've been out on the dating scene or and the humorous side of the dating scene, or had worked in a restaurant at some point. I mean, almost everybody I know had worked in a restaurant at some point in their lives, in college, or yeah, down the in summers, during school. But what I was pleasantly surprised to find, first during we did uh, a beta test, and it was sent to 120 readers, and it was a mix of male, female, all different demographics. And since the book's been published, in both cases, I was pleasantly surprised to find how much men enjoy the book. And this is just anecdotal, but what's the most like surprising thing to me as the author, the women respond to me with, "Oh, that was hilarious." The men say, "I wish I got to know you more. I can't get over the last chapter. It made me feel so bad. I wanted to hear about this, or I wanted to hear about that." Or the men have an emotional response to the book. And the women, some have an emotional response, don't get me wrong, but mostly and anecdotally, the women are just like, "Oh, that was hilarious," and the guys are more wanting to talk about the emotions that I shared in the book.
But when the men are asking you about the emotional side, are they saying, Natalie, this really is bringing a lot out of me. We should really talk about this more over dinner. What are you doing Friday night?
A few, a few have said that. Actually, a few have said that.
I'm
There's
sure
something
they
about the
have.
book.
Listen,
Something about the book.
if there's a woman out there, we got a man on it. That's how it goes. It seems.
That's life, right? Yeah,
Yeah, but
yeah.
I'm also very pleasantly surprised. But it's going to show you also our society is changing, drastically. That it's no longer cliche for genders and age. It's nice that you have a
Right.
more encompassing audience. So that's going to be very fulfilling for you as an author.
Yeah. And I was also surprised that the younger people that read it, meaning like people that are in their young 30s or late 20s right now, they're of a completely different era than when the book was written. I mean, when those experiences were happening, if you can believe this, there was no internet. I mean, it was incredible. Like I tell a story in my book about a trip I took to Mexico, by myself without giving away too much of the book. And this was before the internet and cell phones. So I just was on Sunday, I was invited to give a talk to a book club, a group of women who are part of a book club. And one of the women said to me, "I lost my breath when you were going to Mexico." And I thought, how is she so brave to do this? Before you could really check it out or contact somebody with the safety we have today of technology. So I'm pleasantly surprised when young audiences can also relate to some of my stories, because I think some of them are universal. And throughout the book, juxtaposed to this wild restaurant life with lots of access, because there was anybody who was anybody in Philadelphia and beyond was in this restaurant. It was before Philadelphia had experienced a restaurant renaissance in the 90s. And so it was the place to be and to be seen. So in that way, I was kind of lucky to land there. But throughout that, I'm juxtaposing the story with my Italian American upbringing and my grandmothers and their adages, and my mom, and how I was raised.
Well, there's another one liner I saw in your marketing, which I got to ask you because I got a phone call from this woman. She's known as the Uptown Girl, Christy Brinkley. And she's telling me, I think that not really. Yeah,
Oh
no.
my God, because you know that is like I'm trying to
See,
get this
I
book
said
in
it
the
so
Billy Joel
naturally,
scam.
but yeah, me and Christy were having drinks the other night. No, that never happened. But she was looking at the timeline of this book and she's saying, will Val finally hook up with Billy Joel? How will spending her birthday alone in Mexico turn out? Will she fire her therapist? It all comes full circle for the college girl turned marketing exec from South Philadelphia. There's something we need to know about you and Billy. Was there any issues with Christy there, or are we gonna have to wait for the readers to find that one out?
I'm not going to give any spoiler alerts here, but their Billy Joel was a big part of my life at that time, and he makes several appearances in real life and in my book. And there's a little surprise at the end of the book from Billy Joel. So just
So
leave it
can
at
I, so I gotta ask.
that.
Okay, I gotta ask you because like we're fairly in the same genre era where I
Yeah.
was still using a typewriter in high school, and I said the computer was a fad and it's never gonna take off, and I did not have a cell phone either. I remember the Billy Joel era very well. I didn't get it. What am I missing with Billy Joel? Like I love rock, I love pop, I love all kinds of music. Not that I hate Billy Joel, maybe because it was the Billy Joel Elton John concert series, and I'm like, Billy Joel, Elton John. I don't know. It wasn't speaking to me as a Billy Joel fan. Like, what gravitated you as a fan to Billy Joel?
I felt like I always wanted to understand the meaning behind the lyrics. I mean, he was a pop artist, so a lot of guys that were into true rock were more purists, right? And Billy Joel was a pop artist. I mean, he's a mega talent. Let's as a songster, a lyricist, a piano man. But I can understand what you're saying. But for me, as a young girl, the lyrics spoke to me, and I always had like as probably anybody does with any song they like, is trying to figure out if they know the meaning behind it or how it relates to their life at the time. And also at that time in my life, just like any other thing in this world, right? A song could bring back a memory like this, right? Any song that you could think of or listen to, you could put yourself in that moment, in that time, and that experience of when you first heard it, or if it was playing in the background of an event in your life. Well, during those days, I grew up in Philadelphia, and we always vacationed at the Jersey shores, the beaches of New Jersey, because they're like an hour distance. So my entire life was spent summers at the Jersey Shore. And in the Jersey Shore radio stations, especially back in the day before, Sirius and satellite and all that, they played pop music. And so there was a lot of Billy Joel during those memories, and I attached them to those memories to feel good, you know.
Well, Billy Joel, if you're watching this right now, which I'm pretty sure you are, you're listening in. Lying down with dogs may be of interest to you, my friend, and you got to reach out to Natalie for some stories. So
Yeah. I
let's.
mean, I had an opportunity at one point to almost meet him, and it translates to, I think, a funny story in the book.
Well, for those Billy Joel fans or curious fans and or just love good novellas, Lying Down with Dogs, let's get on it. Now, the other thing I find interesting always in as far as in the world of publishing, movies, TV shows, music, as soon as something comes out, and it's not even it's still warm off the press, right? And it's all new and everything. The first question almost fans inevitably come up on the internet: when's your next work coming out?
Yeah.
And so I'm sure you get asked this every day. And as soon as they pick up the book, right away their question is, okay, I'm going to commit to this. What's her next work going to be? So from Lying Down with Dogs, have you already pictured the future for yourself, Natalie? And where is your publishing heading from here?
So I want to kind of live with this for a little bit, but I do have an idea for a sequel. And it just came to me after the publishing of this book because I didn't really think about a sequel. So many people have said to me, what does Val do next? Where does Val go? I want to hear you. Left me hanging. So I have an idea for a sequel. I want to bring in the humor of, believe it or not, funerals in the sequel, and my Italian upbringing and relation to those. Um, and I don't know when I'm going to be moved to put pen to paper because right now I'm still sort of living with Lying Down with Dogs. I also have in me, I think, a marketing book. I'd like to write something more, I don't know if you would call it technical, but certainly nonfiction about my experiences helping clients and in my corporate past with positioning, and how that's still, it's not talked about as much anymore, but it's still very much a part of uh, successful marketing. So that's the foreseeable future in the next 3 to 5 years.
That's what I was wondering,
two
because
years.
if you're going to be going in the same genre, if you're going to continue with the same character with Val, if you're going to go back to children's books, if you're going to go something more with marketing. So it's funny because I don't know how you feel about it. I could tell you when I finished draft one and the book was done from my end, I wrote it with the intention this is a one and done. I am never going to write another book again. I've put everything into myself into this thing and I never going to do it. It's my one thing. And but I don't think the universe allows for that. It's especially you build a relationship with an audience, there's a trust there. They're not going to let you off the hook that easily. So
Yeah.
if your worst problem in life is that you have too many book ideas and too many books for demand, may that be your worst problem.
But I can really relate to what you're saying, because so much, I mean, it's like giving birth. I mean, so much of me is in that book, and I'm exposed in a lot of ways in that book, because as you can see on the cover, it says based on a true story. And that's something that Lindsay Dearking, our publisher, um, was really compelled to do at the very last leg right before the book was published. And that's because so much of it is based on my real life experience, even though the timeline is fictionalized, the characters are fictionalized. They're an amalgam of many people that have influenced my life, not one to one, although they seem that way. And then I incorporate things like my real experiences with Billy Joel and my deceased grandmothers. So there's a lot of real things in the book that compelled her to put that on the cover. So much of myself is exposed in the book, even like failed relationships, say, or, it took everything. So I can relate to what you're saying. And that's why I say I'm still living with this one. I'm not really ready yet for the next one, but I have these ideas swirling about in my head. And it might just be an easier thing for me to write something about marketing maybe in between, or maybe revisit some of my children's books. I don't know. I have lots of ideas, and we'll just see where it goes. But I relate to what you're saying. You just really, it is you. It is you personified on paper. It's you. It's your life. It's your experiences. It's your emotions. It's your words. So much of it.
So when you're mentioning about birthing and about bringing life to something, I want to share a quick funny story with you if you like funny stories. So when I was halfway through my book, we're having a book meeting. We meet once a week, and then at the end, she says to me, "So where are these chapters that you mentioned?" And I'm like, "What do you mean?" And I go to look, four of my chapters are missing, and I don't have a backup. And I literally feel like my heart is getting pulled out of my body, and the fear and hyperventilation is starting. And I think to myself, there's no way I can recreate that now. Those were one and dones. And I'm like, I'm not going to write this week. I'm not going to write next week. And what am I going to do? Anyways, luck will have it. They got recovered because in the electronic world, when something actually accidentally gets deleted, if you notify them within X amount of time, they recover them. So they were alive. They did not die, and I got so inspired that the next day I was in the middle of the book. I wrote the ending. The ending came to me that night. I felt so good and liberated, and then it was the biggest relief ever. I'm like, oh, the beginning's there, the middle's there, the end's there. Now I just got to fill it in, and it
Yeah.
felt so good. And it's like you're saying, you put so much of yourself into it that when you come out, it's like I feel like I ran like 10 marathons. I'm so
Right.
mentally exhausted that
Yes.
I can't even look at it anymore. And it's funny, but I go back even like I was blogging many years ago, and that was where a lot of my writing came to be. But when I really enjoyed writing something, when I went back and read it, I read it as a reader, not as a writer. I didn't even remember writing that stuff. Like you get into such a zone. I
It's
don't know.
amazing.
You know about that writer zone where you just focus, you don't see anything else, but then when you go read it the next day, you don't remember it because you were in a trance when you did it.
Yes. Yes.
Have you experienced that?
Yeah, I have written a few articles that were published locally, like in a magazine or a newspaper over time. And sometimes I'll go back to an article I wrote 10, 15, 20 years ago, and I go, wow, I remember writing exactly that because I'm reading it from a different perspective. The other thing that happens, and I'm sure, I don't know if this happens to you, is that it's a form of mental torture or maybe OCD. I would be up in the middle of the night because I wanted to say although instead of albeit, or a word choice would haunt me in the middle of the night. And I would get up in the morning and I'd be like, I gotta change that sentence. I have to change that sentence. It's hard to let it go. So even now when I read back, like sometimes I've been asked to read aloud at when I've been invited to a book signing or a book club, I go, I could have tightened that sentence up, or that's a little redundant. The editing just never stops. It never stops. So
You are very much like my partner David Corman at our law firm, and when he like somebody hands him a lease, it cannot escape red ink. That's how
right.
he is. He's like every word, every comma, everything else. For me, I just flows. It comes out in one shot, and I'm done. I very rarely ever want to edit my stuff. I'm
That's a blessing.
To me, I'm like the essence is there because I feel like it's like when I'm cooking. It's never gonna end otherwise. I'm like, oh, should I put a little more salt, less salt? Should I have added this? Should I have added that? Should I put in paprika? Should I?
Right.
So you're gonna. I can't handle that. So I
Yeah.
have that OCD type A personality.
Right.
But there's things where I can say to myself, okay, you did it, you move on. So
Yes.
it's like when I write something, if I read it over once, I'm done. I'm
Yeah.
comfortable with it and I've walked away. That's where it's good that I have an editor because Lindsay will come back to me and she'll take a totally different perspective. And I'm like, didn't see it that way. That's interesting, you know?
Yes. Yeah.
And if me and her can agree on it, then I feel like it's a good work.
Yes.
But
Yeah.
if I'm left to my own devices, I'm done. I just walk
Right.
away from it. I never want to look at it again. So
I know. That's a blessing, really.
yeah. But then I'm like, I leave the house. I'm like, "Oh, did I turn off the stove? Did I, we all got our little lovely
Yeah.
OCDs.
Yes.